Marcus Chen rubbed his prosthetic leg through his worn jeans, the phantom pain acting up again as the transport ship's engines hummed beneath his feet. 3 years since he'd left Earth. 3 years since the doctors told him his military career was over, and he still wasn't used to the constant ache. The galactic station Nexus 7 sprawled before them through the viewport. A massive spinning wheel of metal and energy that housed over 12 million beings from across the known galaxy. "First time at the Nexus?" asked the blue-skinned Catherian sitting across from him. Her translator collar flickered as it converted her melodic language into standard galactic common. Marcus nodded. "Heard they had the biggest exotic auctions in this sector." The Catherian's 4 eyes widened slightly. "You're here for the auctions?" "Most humans stick to the commercial districts. The exotic auctions can be dangerous." "I've seen dangerous," Marcus replied quietly, touching the scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. "Besides, I'm looking for something specific." The ship docked with a metallic clang that resonated through the hull. Marcus gathered his single duffel bag and made his way through the crowds of alien beings. The station's artificial atmosphere carried a dozen different scents, some pleasant, others that made his eyes water. Holographic signs in hundreds of languages pointed toward various sectors. He followed the ones marked with the auction house symbol. The Crimson Bazaar auction house sat in the station's underbelly, a place where the artificial lighting was dimmer and the air recyclers worked overtime to mask questionable odors. Marcus had learned about this place during his recovery on the medical station orbiting Jupiter. A fellow wounded veteran had mentioned it, said you could find anything here, legal or otherwise. What Marcus was looking for definitely fell into the otherwise category. The auction hall buzzed with conversations in a dozen languages. Beings of every description filled the tiered seating, some humanoid, others so alien that Marcus could barely comprehend their form. A massive Croylian, standing nearly 9 feet tall with skin like armored plates, argued with a group of insectoid traders. 3 ethereal wraiths floated near the ceiling, their translucent bodies shimmering with contained energy. Marcus found a seat near the back, close to the exits. Old habits from his military days, always know your escape routes. "Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed entities of all classifications," the auctioneer's voice boomed through the hall. The being on the stage appeared to be some sort of crystalline creature, its faceted body refracting the stage lights into prismatic patterns. "Welcome to today's exotic acquisition event. Please note that all sales are final, and Crimson Bazaar accepts no responsibility for injuries, deaths, or psychological trauma resulting from purchased specimens." The crowd chuckled, a sound that came out as clicks, whistles, and grinding noises from the various species present. Marcus watched as the first few lots went by. Rare plants from the Andromeda spiral that sang in harmonious frequencies. A collection of crystallized time fragments from a dying star. A small creature that existed partially in 11 dimensions, its form constantly shifting as it moved between realities. None of it interested him. He was looking for something specific. Something the medical staff had mentioned in hushed tones during his rehabilitation. A cure, they said, but not from any human medicine. The story went that certain alien creatures possessed healing properties that could regenerate lost limbs, repair damaged nerves, restore what human medicine couldn't touch. "Lot 47, the auctioneer announced, and Marcus sat up straighter. "A most unusual acquisition from the disputed territories near the Veil Nebula." The cargo platform rose from beneath the stage, revealing a massive containment unit. Through the energy bars, Marcus could see movement, something large and dark shifting within. A mature draconic regent of the extinct Valdris species, along with 6 viable offspring, the auctioneer continued. "I must warn potential bidders, these creatures are highly intelligent, extremely dangerous, and have proven impossible to domesticate. The adult specimen has already killed 3 previous owners." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several potential bidders shifted nervously in their seats. "The Valdris were known for their regenerative capabilities," the auctioneer continued. "Their scales, blood, and tissue contain properties that can accelerate healing and restore damaged biological systems. However, I cannot stress enough the danger involved. These are not pets. They are apex predators with intelligence comparable to most sapient species. Marcus leaned forward. The containment field flickered for a moment, and he caught a glimpse of the creature within. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, scales that shifted from deep purple to black, eyes that glowed like molten gold, and a form that spoke of power barely contained. Even through the energy barriers, he could sense its presence like a weight on his consciousness. The 6 smaller forms huddled near their mother. Hatchlings, no bigger than house cats, but already showing the same predatory grace as their parent. Bidding starts at 50,000 credits, the auctioneer announced, immediately. Several bidders raised their identifying paddles. The Croylian from earlier, a collective of hive mind merchants, and what appeared to be a representative from one of the weapons manufacturing cartels, Marcus watched the bidding climb. 60,000, 75, 100,000. He thought about his discharge bonus, the settlement from his injury, the money he'd saved during 3 years of medical treatments. It was meant to be his fresh start, his chance to find a new life after the military. The bidding slowed as it approached 150,000 credits. Do I hear 160? The auctioneer called. Marcus could see what the other bidders planned. The weapons cartel wanted to harvest the creatures for their regenerative properties. The hive mind collective spoke in rapid clicks about dissection and analysis. The Croylian muttered something about gladiatorial entertainment. None of them saw what. Marcus saw. The mother dragon wasn't just angry, she was protective. Even in containment, even facing inevitable death or exploitation, she kept her body between her young and the crowd. Her golden eyes held an intelligence that spoke of understanding exactly what was happening, exactly what these beings intended for her children. Marcus had seen that look before. In the eyes of mothers in war zones, trying to shield their families from forces beyond their control. 160,000, Marcus called out, raising his paddle. The hall fell silent. Heads turned toward the human in the back row. The auctioneer's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been surprise. Sir, the auctioneer said carefully, I should inform you that these creatures require specialized containment, specific dietary needs, and pose significant danger to— I heard you the first time, Marcus interrupted. 160. The Croylian turned to stare at him, its small eyes glittering with either respect or contempt. Human, you bid on death itself. These creatures will tear you apart before you can blink. Maybe, Marcus replied. But that's my problem, isn't it? The weapons cartel representative raised their paddle. 170,000. Marcus felt his heart sink. He'd calculated his maximum bid carefully. 165,000 was absolutely everything he had. 175, called the hive mind collective. The bidding war continued, climbing toward 200,000 credits. Marcus sat back in his chair, watching his chance slip away. Maybe it was for the best. What was he thinking anyway? A washed-up soldier with one leg and a handful of nightmares, trying to buy the galaxy's most dangerous creatures? Then something strange happened. The containment field flickered again, and for just a moment, the mother dragon's eyes met his across the auction hall. Marcus felt something pass between them, not telepathy but something deeper. Recognition, perhaps? Or understanding. She had sized him up the same way he'd sized up new recruits. Looking past the surface to see what lay underneath. 200,000, called the weapons cartel. 210, countered the hive mind. The Croylian dropped out with a disgusted grunt. Fools, paying premium prices for suicide? Marcus watched the creatures in their containment field. The mother kept her body protectively curved around her young, but her eyes remained fixed on him. The hatchlings, despite their fear, showed the same defiant spirit as their parent. He thought about his apartment back on the medical station. Empty rooms filled with medical equipment he no longer needed and memories he couldn't escape. He thought about his pension, his quiet retirement, his carefully planned future of physical therapy and adjustment counseling. Then he thought about those golden eyes, and the way the mother dragon refused to give up even facing impossible odds. 500,000 credits, Marcus called out. The auction hall erupted. Beings of every description turned to stare at the human who had just bid more than most of them made in a year. The auctioneer's form pulsed so rapidly it looked like a strobe light. "Sir," the auctioneer stammered, "I must ask if you have the means to transfer authorization Marcus Chun. Account 7-7-4-9-Alpha, Marcus said, transmitting his financial credentials. Pull it from my Earth Colonial Bank account." The auctioneer consulted his systems, and Marcus saw the exact moment when the being realized the bid was legitimate. 500,000 credits? The abandoned freight dock on level 47 wasn't much to look at. Rust stained the metal walls, the air recyclers wheezed with age, and the lighting flickered intermittently. But it was large enough for 7 dragons, isolated enough to avoid unwanted attention, and cheap enough for Marcus's rapidly dwindling credits to afford. Temporary, he told himself as he watched the mother dragon explore their new space. She moved with careful precision, her claws clicking against the metal grating as she investigated every corner, every shadow. The hatchlings stayed close to her, though the brave one from the auction house kept glancing toward Marcus with obvious curiosity. It had been 3 days since the purchase. 3 days of bureaucratic nightmares, health inspections, and barely legal housing arrangements. The station authorities had been less than thrilled to discover a human planning to house 7 uncontained, draconic regents in a civilian area. Even one as rundown as the abandoned docks. Marcus pulled out his portable food synthesizer and programmed it for basic protein rations. The dragons had eaten nothing during transport, despite his attempts to offer them various foods. According to the limited research he'd managed to access, Valdris were obligate carnivores who preferred their meat fresh and preferably still moving. The synthesizer hummed to life, producing gray cubes that smelled vaguely of meat. Marcus placed them in a clean bowl and set it near the mother dragon. She sniffed the offering once, made a sound of complete disdain, and turned away. "Okay," Marcus muttered. "Plan B it is." He'd expected this. Wild creatures didn't adapt easily to processed foods, and proud species like the Valdris probably considered synthesized protein an insult. But fresh meat on a space station cost credits he didn't have, and hunting permits required documentation he couldn't obtain. The youngest hatchling made a small sound of hunger, and Marcus's heart clenched. 3 days without food. They were all getting weaker, especially the babies. Marcus pulled up his personal communicator and scrolled through the contacts he'd made since arriving at the station. Most were merchants, bureaucrats, or other beings trying to profit from his unusual situation. But one name stood out: Crix, the Phylaxi maintenance supervisor who'd helped him secure the dock space. "Crix? It's Marcus Chun. I need a favor." "Human Marcus?" Crix's translator rendered the clicking speech into common. "How are your death lizards settling in?" "They're dragons, not lizards. And they're hungry. The synthesized food isn't working." Oh, pause. "Fresh meat on Nexus 7 costs many credits. Even scrap meat from processing plants." "I know. But I was thinking maintenance crews sometimes have to dispose of biological waste, right? Spoiled food shipments, expired medical supplies, things like that." Another pause, longer this time. "This is very dangerous thinking, Human Marcus. Such waste is disposed of through proper channels." "Of course it is. I'm just wondering, hypothetically, what happens if someone were to accidentally misplace a disposal container? And if someone else accidentally found it before it reached the incinerators?" Crix made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. "Hypothetically, such accidents sometimes occur near disposal chute 7C on this level. Hypothetically, today at 0300 hours, there might be such an accident. Hypothetically, I might happen to be walking past that area around that time. Accidents happen, Human Marcus, even to careful beings like myself." After the call ended, Marcus sat back against the metal wall and watched the dragons. The mother had claimed the largest corner of the space, arranging herself so she could observe all entrances while keeping her young between her body and the walls. It was classic defensive positioning, something Marcus recognized from his military training. The hatchlings were more active now that they felt secure. play fighting with each other in the way that young predators do. Even weakened by hunger, they moved with inherent grace and coordination. That spoke of evolved hunters. One of the larger hatchlings, Marcus had started thinking of him as scout because of his tendency to explore their boundaries, wandered over and sniffed at Marcus's prosthetic leg. The artificial limb seemed to fascinate the young dragon, perhaps because it carried scents of metal and electronics rather than living flesh. Weird, isn't it? Marcus said softly. Half of me is original parts, half is replacement hardware. Scout looked up at him with golden eyes identical to his mother's. The young dragon made a soft trilling sound and gently touched one claw to the junction where prosthetic met flesh. Marcus froze. The touch was incredibly gentle for a creature with claws designed to tear through armor plating. It was almost curious, sympathetic even. The mother dragon raised her head, watching the interaction with intense focus. Marcus got the impression that his response in this moment was critically important, though he wasn't sure why. Slowly, carefully, Marcus reached out and gently stroked the scales along Scout's neck. They were warm to the touch, almost feverish, and seemed to pulse with that inner light he'd noticed before. Scout leaned into the touch, making that soft trilling sound again. The other hatchlings looked up from their play, watching with obvious interest. You understand more than they think you do, don't you? Marcus said. All of you. The mother dragon's response was a low rumble that seemed to come from deep in her chest. Not hostile, but not entirely friendly either. More like acknowledgement. Marcus spent the next several hours trying to make their temporary home more comfortable. He rigged up privacy screens using salvaged maintenance tarps, adjusted the environmental controls to provide warmer temperatures in the dragon's preferred areas, and even managed to create a crude water feature. Using a recycling pump and some spare piping, the hatchlings found the water feature endlessly entertaining, splashing and playing while their mother looked on with what Marcus was learning to recognize as maternal exasperation. At 0300 hours. Marcus took a walk past disposal chute 7C. The container that had accidentally been misplaced contained about 50 pounds of various organic waste. Spoiled meat from the station's restaurants, expired medical nutrients, even some fresh fish that had apparently gone bad during transport. To humans, it would have been inedible garbage. To obligate carnivores who preferred their meat aged, it was a feast. Marcus hauled the container back to their dock and opened it near the dragons. The response was immediate. The mother dragon's head shot up, nostrils flaring. The hatchlings stopped their play and looked toward the container with obvious interest. Even from across the room, Marcus could see their pupils dilate as predatory instincts kicked in, but none of them moved toward the food. Marcus frowned. They were clearly hungry, clearly interested in the meat. So why weren't they eating? Understanding hit him like a physical blow. Pack hierarchy. The mother dragon was the alpha, and in their natural environment, she would eat first. The young would only feed after she had taken her portion, but she wasn't eating because she didn't trust him yet. In the wild, alpha predators didn't feed when potential threats were present. She was protecting her young by maintaining vigilance, even at the cost of her own hunger. Marcus backed away from the food container, moving to the far side of the dock space. It's okay, he said softly. I'm not a threat to your food. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the mother dragon approached the container. She sniffed carefully at the contents, selected a piece of the aged meat, and began to eat. The change in her behavior was immediate and dramatic. The constant tension in her posture eased, the defensive positioning relaxed. And for the first time since he'd met her, she looked like what she was, a tired mother caring for 6 demanding children. The hatchlings waited until she had eaten her fill before approaching the container themselves. Even then, they fed in a specific order that Marcus suspected reflected their own pack hierarchy. Scout was first among the young ones, followed by the others in what appeared to be size and dominance order, the smallest hatchling, a delicate creature Marcus had started thinking of as pip-fed last. She was noticeably smaller than her siblings, with scales that seemed more silver than black, and movements that suggested physical weakness. Marcus made a mental note to keep an eye on her. In the wild, weak offspring often didn't survive. But they weren't in the wild anymore. Over the following days, a routine developed. Marcus would make his early morning walks past various disposal chutes, always managing to find containers that had been accidentally misplaced. The dragons would feed according to their hierarchy, with the mother always eating first and Pip always eating last. Marcus began timing his own meals to coincide with theirs, eating his synthesized rations while they consumed their fresh meat. It seemed to reassure the mother dragon that he was part of the pack dynamic rather than a threat to it. Slowly, incrementally, trust began to build. Scout was the first to approach Marcus during feeding time, eventually growing bold enough to investigate the human's food with obvious curiosity. The other hatchlings followed his lead, and soon Marcus found himself surrounded by young dragons during meals. The mother dragon watched these interactions carefully but didn't interfere. Marcus began to suspect she was using her children to test his intentions, sending them close enough to gauge his reactions, while keeping herself ready to intervene if necessary. It was during one of these meals that Marcus noticed. The attack came at dawn, when the station's artificial lighting was transitioning from night cycle to day. Marcus woke to Starheart's urgent mental voice cutting through his sleep like a blade. Danger comes. Many ships. Military formation. Marcus rolled out of his makeshift bed, his prosthetic leg protesting the sudden movement. Through the dock's small porthole, he could see the running lights of at least a dozen vessels approaching the station. Their formation and synchronized movement marked them unmistakably as military craft. But whose military? The hatchlings were already awake, their golden eyes reflecting the emergency lighting that had begun flashing throughout the dock level. They moved with the controlled tension of young predators sensing imminent threat, clustering around their mother while maintaining clear sight lines to all exits. Marcus's communicator crackled to life. All residents of Level 47, this is Nexus 7 Command. Please remain in your quarters while we address a security situation. This is not a drill. Starheart, Marcus said quietly, can you sense what they want? The great dragon's mind touched his, sharing images and emotions that made his blood run cold. Ships bearing the insignia of the hegemony, a militant alliance of species that viewed humans as an inferior race suitable only for slavery or extinction. Soldiers in powered armor designed specifically for hunting large creatures. Weapons that fired neural disruptors capable of stunning dragons without killing them. They come for us? Starheart said simply. The hegemony prizes our kind as weapons of war. Live specimens are worth fortunes to their war machine. Marcus felt ice forming in his stomach. He should have seen this coming. The auction house transaction had been public record. A human purchasing 7 draconic regents for 500,000 credits would have attracted attention from every military force in the galaxy. How long do we have? Images flashed through his mind, Starheart's enhanced senses detecting the approaching soldiers, calculating their movement speed through the station's corridors. 20 minutes, perhaps less. Marcus grabbed his emergency kit and began pulling on his clothes. His military training kicked in, years of combat experience overriding panic. First priority, assess the situation. Second, protect civilians. Third, plan for withdrawal, except there was nowhere to withdraw to. Can you fight them? He asked. Starheart's mental response carried complex emotions, protective fury toward her young, calculating assessment of enemy capabilities, and underneath it all, a deep reluctance to engage in violence while her children were present. The hatchlings are not ready for battle. In the open void, against a single ship, perhaps. Here, in these metal caves, surrounded by soft-skinned civilians, many innocents would die. Marcus understood. Dragons were weapons of mass destruction. In the confined space of a space station, Starheart's full combat capabilities would be as dangerous to innocent beings as to enemy soldiers. There has to be another way. His communicator buzzed with an incoming transmission. Marcus hesitated for a moment, then accepted the call. The face that appeared on his screen was decidedly reptilian, with scales arranged in geometric patterns and eyes that held cold intelligence. When the being spoke, its translator rendered the words in a crisp, authoritative tone. Marcus Chun, I am High Commander Vextel of the Hegemony 4th Fleet. You have something that belongs to us. I don't know what you're talking about, Marcus replied. Everything I own was purchased legally. The Valdris specimens were stolen from a Hegemony research facility 6 months ago. The beings who sold them to you were acting as agents of a terrorist organization. Your purchase, while perhaps made in good faith, was of stolen property. Marcus felt his heart sink. Whether or not the accusation was true, it provided legal justification for the Hegemony to reclaim the dragons. Galactic law was clear about stolen property. It must be returned to its rightful owners regardless of any intervening transactions. I'd like to see your documentation, Marcus said, buying time. Certainly. My boarding teams will present full credentials when they arrive to reclaim our property. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus staring at a blank screen. Through their bond, he could feel Starheart's growing agitation. The great dragon had lived through military capture before. The scars, both physical and psychological, ran deep. They lie, she told him. We were not stolen from them. We were born free among the star reefs of the Void Garden. The first time we saw metal cages was when the slavers came. Marcus believed her. Everything about the Hegemony's claim felt wrong. Too convenient, too perfectly timed. But belief wouldn't stop a military boarding operation. His communicator buzzed again. This time the caller ID showed Crix's identifier. Human Marcus. The Thalaxi's voice was tight with worry. Dangerous times approach. Hegemony troops are already in the station. My maintenance access shows them moving toward level 47. How long? Minutes only. They move with purpose and violence. Many beings flee before them. Marcus closed his eyes, thinking furiously. The dock level had limited access points, only 2 main corridors and the service tunnels that Crix used for maintenance. The dragons could probably break through the station's hull and escape into space, but not all of them. The hatchlings weren't mature enough for void travel, and even if they were, where would they go? Crix, he said suddenly. The maintenance tunnels, how extensive are they? They connect all levels, all sections. But human Marcus, they are narrow spaces, built for beings like myself. Your death lizards would not fit. Marcus looked at the hatchlings. Scout, Voidwalker, Ironscale, Shadow Dart, Moonwhisper, Sunfire, and Little Starlight. They were larger than house cats now, but still small enough to fit through maintenance spaces. Maybe. Starheart, he said urgently. Could you follow the hatchlings through the tunnels if you had to? I would not fit. But the young ones... She turned her golden gaze to her children, and Marcus felt the deep pain of a mother contemplating separation from her offspring. They could survive in such spaces for a time. A plan began to form in Marcus's mind. Desperate, dangerous, with a dozen ways it could go wrong, but better than surrender. Crix, I need you to guide the hatchlings through the tunnels to the cargo bay on level 12. Can you do that? This is madness, human Marcus. What of you? What of the mother dragon? We'll buy them time to escape. Once they're safe, maybe we can negotiate. Even as he said it, Marcus knew there would be no negotiating. The Hegemony didn't bargain with inferior species. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they couldn't use. But his children, and he realized he had started thinking of them that way, would be safe. I understand your plan, Starheart said, her mental voice heavy with emotion. You intend to sacrifice yourself so that my young ones may live. Not sacrifice, Marcus corrected. Strategic delay. I'm very hard to kill. Through their bond, he shared memories of his military service. Battles fought against impossible odds, wounds that should have been fatal. A stubborn refusal to die even when death would have been easier. Starheart saw the IED explosion that took his leg, the months of painful rehabilitation, the quiet determination that had brought him through every dark moment. Your pack, she said finally. And Marcus felt the weight of absolute acceptance in those words. We protect pack. The sound of heavy boots in the corridor outside cut short any further planning. Marcus grabbed his emergency kit and moved toward the dock's main entrance. If he was going to make a stand, he wanted to draw their attention away from the dragons. "Go," he told the hatchlings. "Crix will keep you safe." Scout approached first, as always. The young dragon touched his nose to Marcus's hand, a gesture that conveyed both affection and farewell. The others followed suit, even little Starlight managing to overcome her shyness for what they all understood might be the last time. Starheart watched her children disappear into the maintenance. Access with Crix only when the tunnel entrance sealed behind them did she turn back to Marcus. "Now we show them why humans are feared across the galaxy," she said, and he could hear the fierce approval in her mental voice. The dock's main entrance exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Through the breach came 6 soldiers in powered armor, their weapons already trained on Marcus and Starheart. Behind them, Marcus could see more figures in the corridor, at least a full squad. Possibly 2, the lead soldier's voice came through external speakers, distorted by the suit's vocal modulators. "Human Chun, step away from the creature. Hegemony High Command has authorized lethal force if you interfere with specimen recovery." Marcus stood his ground. "The creature has a name. It's Starheart, and she's not going anywhere with you. You have 10 seconds to comply." Marcus felt Starheart's presence in his mind, her consciousness merging partially with his own. Suddenly, he could perceive the battle space as she did, heat signatures revealing exact positions, electromagnetic fields showing weapon charge levels, air currents indicating movement and breathing patterns. 5 seconds. "Starheart," Marcus said quietly, "remember what I taught you about human military tactics?" During their weeks together, Marcus had shared his knowledge freely with the great dragon. Combat formations, strategic thinking, the art of turning an enemy's advantages against them. She had absorbed it all with the keen intelligence of a natural predator. "I remember," she replied. "Humans fight with thigh.